Today we're going to work on this 1955 Cadillac casting by Matchbox. I want to make this a 4x4 off-road machine. I have acquired some wheels from another casting, and I went ahead and started crafting the chassis to receive these wheels. This is not the original chassis in the center here. I cut the original piece out a few years back, and this was a body for a Tyco racetrack car, and it worked good on the racetrack, but I really don't use the racetrack that much anymore. It takes up so much space, so I'm going to go ahead and just convert it back to a casting that you can play with like a traditional disassembly, which is pretty simple since I already had cut this center part out a long time ago. And I also took a chrome pen and highlighted some of the chrome on here. I'm going to try to paint around it to save that. I need to get the interior and windows out. These are out. I think I want to make this a two-tone paint job. I'm going to leave the body a blue color and paint the roof white. I'm going to attempt to paint around the chrome. If I accidentally paint over it, I'll touch it back up later. Alright, let that dry. Alright, the main reason that I decided to paint this blue is because I want to try to save these factory chrome details like the emblem and the tail lights and such. So I'm going to try to paint around those. Some of this other chrome I'm not too worried about. I'll just put it back on later with the paint pen. But let's go ahead and get started. Alright, now I just need to let it dry before we apply more coats. Okay, while I'm waiting for paint to dry, I'm going to go ahead and paint the interior. I think it would look good white, so I want to see how that looks. Can always change it if I don't like the white. Okay, let that dry. Alright, the roof is dry enough for the second coat. Okay, let that dry. also put a couple more coats on the white. I might leave it like this. You could probably use another coat. It'd be nice to paint those inserts a different color, but I don't know. My eyes are good enough to do that. Alright, I used one of these paint pens here. That's a chrome finish by Krylon. And they work pretty good. I did the best I could with putting the chrome back on where I went over it with the blue by accident here and there. I think everything's ready. Maybe a little touch up there on the chrome. I'm going to go ahead and get the other colors ready and start the weathering process. I want to make this look rusty and weathered because I don't think anybody would take a really nice Cadillac like this and turn it into a 4x4. So let's make it look like it's weathered and beat up a little bit. I put a couple more coats of white on the interior, but it still might need another coat. And I can do that while I'm waiting for one of my washes to dry. Our first wash is going to be watered down gray, and it's called pewter gray. A good amount on the roof. Some on the hood. And some on the trunk. All right, I'll just let this dry. We're already getting a nice crinkle effect here on the hood. I put a little bit of alcohol in my watered down paint in hopes that it activates this acrylic a little bit here on the trunk happening as well. And those help make it look more worn and rusty as it dries out. It helps to place your project near a fan or even take it outside if the sun is out and it's hot. That's another good way to make this happen faster. Well, I went ahead and tried to make it a two-tone interior. I got a bunch of touch-up to do. If I can get the touch-up accurate looking, it'll be all right. Okay, everything's dry. We're ready for our second coat. I definitely need a bunch more on the hood. And I'd like to see some on the top of the fenders. I really don't want it in this crack. I want it on top of the fender. And definitely some more on the trunk lid. Alright, I'll let this dry. Oh, maybe not. Maybe a little bit on the roof, a couple spots. Let's say like that. Alright, it's still drying, looking pretty good. Hopefully this is the last coat of the gray. Okay, our second coat is dry. It's got a pretty nice effect. I think I'm going to stop with the gray on the top, place the car on its side, and do some side work with the same color gray. Alright, let's add some gray to these doors. think that's good enough. Alright, since the vehicle is dry and looks like that is enough gray for this side, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the chestnut color. That's the color that I like to use for my first coat of rust. And I'm basically just wanting to put rust wherever the gray didn't really cover. That's what I'm going to try to do here. And it might take more than one coat of the rust. Usually does. Alright, I'll just let this dry. Now I'm going to move on to the darkest color for my rust, and that is burnt umber. Put this in some spots that are light. Alright, I think that's good enough for now. Just let this dry. Alright, I added a second coat of burnt umber along the top edge of the fender and door. This side's almost ready. Okay, it's time to do the driver's side. Get it turned over. And I will add some gray on these panels, and then we will do the rest. Alright. Alright, we're getting a nice crackle effect on the rear quarter panel and on the doors. Alright, just like on the other side, I want to take this chestnut color and put it where the gray areas didn't take so well. Alright, now just let this dry. Alright, now I'm ready to add some darker rust areas with the burnt umber that is watered down. let this dry. Okay, the driver's side has enough rust for now. It's really starting to look like something that a person may have pulled out of the junkyard and decided to turn into a four-wheel drive truck. Let's add some rust to the top of this to complete the look. Too much on there. Alright, I hit the front bumper and back bumper at the same time there. Just taking a guess. I won't know how it really looks, so I pick it up. It'll have some rust on those areas. Alright, it's coming along nicely, but I want to darken up this top edge with the burnt umber. On this hood. All right, our casting is dry everywhere. I let it set overnight actually. So I'm going to go ahead and do the final step, and that's to put some overspray dots in a few different colors over the entire casting. I usually start with Tuscan red, watered down. Alright, just a little bit of color on here goes a long way. It's easy to put too much, so try to keep your brush pretty dry. You can see all the overspray on the paper. I don't want to get too crazy. Alright, now I move on to back to the chestnut color. Put a little bit on my brush. And I want to apply some more fine dots in that color. Then I like to do a third layer of dots with the burnt umber. It's all the same three colors, Tuscan red, chestnut, and burnt umber. And just put the smallest dots you can. And I really think this part is what finishes the rust off the best, these little dots. You can see there's little dots all over the place. I'll just let this dry and I can do the final assembly. I really like how it's turning out so far. Alright, I think it's dry. I'm pleased with how it turned out. I'm going to go ahead and do the final assembly. Got the chassis in there just how I want it. Now I need to glue that so it doesn't move around. I'm going to install the wheels the same way. I'm going to use super glue, and then I took a file and I sanded the chrome off of the chassis so it should bond to the plastic now that the chrome is out of the way. But I also might take a toothpick and some epoxy and go back over this once it sets up. Make sure I have a nice bond. Looks pretty good. Let this dry, and we'll do the same thing to the back. Just glue this on, let it dry, and then I'll take a toothpick and some epoxy and reinforce these bonds. Okay, we'll set that up, let it sit, and we'll have us a 4x4. Alright, here's our first glance. I really can't do much until it sets up. If the glue is still drying, but this is how it's going to look. I think it looks pretty neat. Now if I could just figure out a way to put something that looks like a transfer case and 2 drive shafts going to those axles, then it would look really cool. Alright, it turned out pretty good. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if you feel like supporting the channel, you can check out my eBay store. Thanks and have a great day.
Well, hello everybody. That was a fun ride, wasn't it?